Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Douglas, please explain to me why Steve Bannon is in the thick of this conversation with Hunter Biden's thumb drives, hard drives, and all this stuff that's spilling out with the Bidens.
Well, Steve Bannon is a parasite. And when he tried to control Trump and he couldn't, then he went over to Kissinger's side, and Kissinger's a supporter of China. So Bannon went to the richest Chinese people in America, and they all promised him everything like the Chinese do. Yes, yes, yes. And then he got a no, no, no. So he went to China himself, and just like Eric Schmidt and just like Zuckerberg and just like half a dozen other big tech people have sold out to China and are now under their control. So was Steve Bannon. And so he had to leave China. And where did he go? To Hong Kong. Now, did Bannon have anything to do with these leaks? No, absolutely not. Does Bannon even know who gave the leaks? No, he doesn't. Does Luda know who gave the leaks? The man who brought in the whistleblower doctor who had been working in Wuhan and knew that the P4 lab had in fact developed the exact virus that has been released on the world? No, they don't know anything. They're idiots. What they actually have are 3 hard drives, all 3 of which will get them all killed. All 3 of them are dead meat. They are the walking dead. Because first off, they don't even know who it was that got those and how they came about. If you're followers of ours, you know that a man named Ren Zhenjiang, who was the richest real estate oligarch really in China, had decided that the Central Committee had gone too far. And he started speaking out against the Chinese Central Committee and President Xi and his 2 associates, the 3 who are now the major oligarch, totalitarian communist oligarchs of China, all in it for their own self-enrichment, so much so that President Xi developed the most absurd policy in human history called One Belt, One Road, which basically meant my way or the highway. And so Xi said to everyone, we're going to do business with you. We're going to come in, we're going to buy it for more than it's worth. And then what we have seen in every single case when China was blasted by Trump, that China then tries to leverage every country through extortion. They killed this oligarch. They killed Ren. He came up missing after he made these announcements to the public. You do not state that kind of material out loud until you have the evidence. So Ren Zhenjiang had the evidence. Those are his 3 hard drives. And that's the reason that nobody can tell you where they came from, because they're just not paying any attention. If they had paid attention, they would have known the following. First off, let me characterize Robert Hunter Biden, who Joe Biden put on many, many committees. He has a degree in law from Yale, never used it, never been involved in a single case, but he's a lawyer. He sits on the World Food Commission. He sits on some of the biggest commissions in the world that handle the largest amounts of money concerning international globalism. And what does he do there? Oh, like Trump says, he's never had a job. Correct. He has been appointed to these different commissions and these very high-powered positions so that he could have information to use to trade against America. You want to talk about the Logan Act? No one is more guilty of the Logan Act, in other words, doing business for America behind its back, than Hunter Biden.
Not just Hunter Biden, but his dad, Joe. He's also guilty of this.
Joe was paid $900,000 from Rosemont Seneca. We have the proof of that. So Joe got his piece of every pie, but we only were seeing the tip of the iceberg. And I kept saying, no, there's much, much more here. Let me explain this again for the 100th time, putting it in perspective, since the news is catching up with the revelations that we had already given out concerning these things. When Ukraine found 2 of the greatest oil fields in their country, which made them in the top 10 oil fields in the world, they were being ignored. Chevron and Exxon came in and said they were going to basically make Ukraine rich, and they no longer had to count on the pipeline of oil coming out of Kazakhstan, going through Russia, being purified, and then sent in a pipeline through Ukraine into Europe. What's the last thing that Obama did before he left? He blamed the Russians as being in cahoots with Trump, and he put sanctions on them and basically dared Trump to take those sanctions off. Now, those sanctions weren't on during the days when he, Obama, and his vice president, Joe Biden, and his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, were making a fortune off of the deals that were going down in Ukraine. 40% of the gross domestic product of Ukraine was simply putting a tax on the oil coming out of Russia, going into Ukraine, going into Europe. One of the last big oil pipeline wars that we are seeing is a Cold War. It didn't require people dropping bombs, even though some bombs were dropped on Ukraine. Now, Chevron and Exxon thought that they were going to take over Ukraine as they've taken over every other place with oil fields. But what happened? Those deals then fell to smaller companies, Russia's Gazprom, as well as Nafco Gas in Ukraine, which George Soros got on their board, and Burisma, which is the second largest oil company in Ukraine. When Hunter Biden got on that board, let's remember, he didn't go there alone. That's absurd. And then he was supposedly in charge of their legal affairs team. No, that isn't what happened. First off, John Kerry is equally as guilty as Joe Biden, and his son Christopher Hines was on the Burisma board. Mitt Romney, equally as guilty. He put his top representative from Bain Capital, Cofer Black, on the Burisma board. And then what did Burisma get charged with? Oh, multi-million-dollar bribery, extortion, you name it, to hide what they were doing, which basically became cases that were adopted by the top lawyer in Ukraine, Viktor Shogun. They went after the head of Burisma and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Devin Archer and Christopher Hines and Cofer Black and everyone on that board. Every person on the board was shown to basically being paid extortion money from money that was being stolen from the Ukrainian people through these Burisma deals. Let's remember that it isn't $1.5 billion that Hunter Biden secured a deal in China. No, it's $4.5 billion. Now, what's really odd about this is that that's exactly what the Russian dossier, which was created by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee and Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele and all those that we have named who participated in that. What was really going on? They simply took the reality, turned it around, blamed it on Trump. So they blamed Carter Page, a complete idiot. He was supposed to get $4.5 billion from Gazprom for a deal that he was making for Trump that was then to be paid off by the owners of the Russian bank, Alpha Bank. That is exactly what happened. But it wasn't Carter Page. It was Hunter Biden, $4.5 billion. The banks, now we know that the Chinese were using Hunter Biden to make not only political connections, but economic connections to launder the money of the oligarchs to leave China. That's exactly what Hillary Clinton did for the Russians. So the Russian oligarchs, most of them who now live in the city of London, which is a separate economic zone inside of London, they live there, or they've become British citizens who then live in America, and they live in New York City, in one of the most secured fortresses in New York City. These are people waiting to be killed by their country. Putin goes after all of them. He hangs them upside down. He tortures them until they give their offshore account numbers. He steals it, and he has become, what they say, the second richest man in the world. And that's from what we know. And now President Xi of China followed in the exact same footsteps, and now he's one of the richest men in the world.
Well, you bring up Hillary Clinton and the Russians, and I can't help think about the PP dossier and wonder if in one of those releases for Hunter Biden, one of those videos, we're not going to see him conducting the very act that they blame Trump
Plus,
for doing.
Those acts were set up by the Central Committee.
I mean, that's what you get when you rely on a crack addict. In the end, it was all going to fall apart. And it looks like everyone's just rushing forward now to give information on Hunter. You even have one of his associates that has been jailed who is also giving out Hunter's emails.
Bevan Coney. He gave out even more information than is in the 26,000 emails that were part of the first disc. There were 3 discs released. Bannon wants to claim that he has something to do with that. He has nothing to do with it. He doesn't even know where they came from. And the man in China who is putting his life on the line, Luda, once the Chinese catch up with him, which they will now, mark my words, he'll be dead within the year, but not until they completely drain him of his sources. Those sources, those were delivered into the lap of Luda, and they were delivered by people who aren't going to die. Because Ren, this Chinese oligarch, had collected the information. He had set up Hunter Biden. He had set up President Xi. So President Xi's personal information on his fleecing of China is on the third disk. Nobody's talking about the banks like Templeton and USBC and UBS and HSBC. So the banks that were involved in this are on the third disk. So these banks are really nothing more than what Putin has as the oligarchs using British banks to hide the money they're stealing from the Russians.